Yeah, I'm gonna have to spin the block on religion real quick because I thought I made the thesis of my video pretty clear, as well as my stance beyond that particular exploratory project. But I've seen enough misunderstandings of my position to set the record straight again and expound on my critique of religion and, a bit more controversially, an issue that I have with religious anarchism. So, to be clear, where that video is concerned, I'm not some prophet of Ethiopianism. I'm not an Ethiopian. I don't think we should stake any kind of struggle on that axis. I adopted a very particular definition of religion in that video. I don't expect or was not trying to mainstream it, that's not my battle to fight, and I understand that most people are working with definitions that carry the bloody and beloved weight of so-called world religions, the sacred and profane authority of religious leaders, and most especially a heavy dose of theistic cosmology. With all the patriarchy and superstition and mistreatment of neurodivergence and mental illness that often entails. For the most part, I use the word religion to refer to the most commonly recognized religions of the world. I obviously haven't scrutinized every belief system that has now fallen under that flawed category. And yes, religion is a flawed category. I maintain my stance that I strongly oppose the authoritarianism and superstitious ideas that emerge from religious ideologies, and I stand by the position that the fringe, potentially liberatory interpretations of particular texts or religious movements does not outweigh the overwhelmingly authoritarian contrary. Anarchists have long used the slogan, no gods, no masters. And yeah, it's a slogan. And yeah, I have critiques of slogans and how they can plaster over the nuances or even misrepresent ideologies. But this slogan does have a point. I deconstructed from religion. I would consider myself an atheist. That is a personal position for me, but it is connected to my recognition of the harm religion has played in the world. It seems to me that people, particularly those who may be used to a more secular, more openly accepting of atheist or more church and state separated environment, very easily minimize the massive role religion still plays. There seems to be a disregard for the profound and near unassailable social influence of that sacred permission for hierarchy that religions afford. I don't believe that a god figure or gods necessarily need to be understood as an authority, and that's where I do agree with some religious anarchists, even as I don't think that gods exist. Like, yeah, you can believe in a deity or a universal or creative force, but adhering to a system that dictates through religious authorities and or scriptural authority how oneself and others should behave obviously doesn't click with anarchism. How a lot of religions operate is that a god or the gods co-sign the religious hierarchy, be they priests, imams, pundits, whatever else, and other hierarchies, most notably patriarchy, which seems to be a through line across major religions. By hierarchy, I mean the social arrangement that defines mere differences between people according to superior and subordinate social roles. Like, men and women are categories of difference that we can define in different ways, but the hierarchy comes in specifically where we've taken differences between people and culturally and economically and politically defined it in the superiority of men and masculinity and the subordination of women and femininity. And I know that some of the religions are currently enjoying quite good PR, particularly the Catholic Church, with their encyclical against AI, but let's not forget how these religions actually operate beyond the touchy-feely, good vibes, love your neighbor stuff. It's been my opinion that most popular religions, if founded today, would be considered cults, and that time and generational aura give them the legitimacy that today's cults don't get to enjoy. I know cult is a contentious term in the literature, and people prefer softer, less pejorative terms like high control group or new religious movement or whatever. I don't really care. And I don't feel bad that some cults missed the window on starting a new world religion by a few decades or centuries. Like, if you tried to start the Mormon church today, you would be rightfully recognized as a racist and patriarchal crank. The criteria of Robert J. Lifton's thought reform can be seen to varying extents in regular religious conditioning. We could talk about milieu control through submersion and in some cases isolation in the religious community, mystical manipulation where reality is consistently filtered through the group's framework, demand for purity, the kind of black and white good and evil thinking that permeates so many religions, confession, which is literally Catholic, sacred science, where the groups doctrine or ideology is considered to be the ultimate truth beyond all question or dispute, which, to be fair, this criteria is most relevant in fundamentalist context. You also have loading the language, doctrine over person, dispensing of existence. Not all of the criteria apply in every case or to the same strength or extent as the highest control groups or fundamentalist organizations, but it is something that I've observed across the religious experiences and ideologies I've engaged with or known others to engage with and describe to me, particularly various strains of Christianity and Islam. And now, on the subject of religious anarchism, I appreciate what progressive and anarchist religionists try to do. I see y'all in my audience. In fact, I first heard of anarchism during my religious deconstruction when I came across Christian anarchism. But for one, let's not pretend that anarchism wasn't predominantly anti-theist for a reason. It was a recognition of the harm of religion, particularly in the European and American context, Judaism and Christianity. Bakunin criticized the church just as much as the state. Kropotkin thought both should be abolished. Emma Goldman spoke out against Judaism. Many anarchists began by rejecting religion and were anti-clerical before becoming anarchists. Anarchists were also on the forefront of pushing for secularism, from the modern schools to the sciences. And lest you think that it's a solely Western fixation, Chinese anarchists were just as vigorous in calling out the authoritarian belief systems that surrounded them. I don't say this to say that there's one correct way of being an anarchist, or to validate my position with appeals to authority, and I don't deny that religious strains of anarchism have historically existed. But there is a strong overlap between anarchism and anti-clericalism and anti-theism for a reason. A reason that we can miss out on when we act like we can just kumbaya around religion and treat it like untouchable personal beliefs rather than ideological forces that have material effect on the world. Again, a lot of respect for what religious anarchists try to do, but just be a heretic. By some perspectives, you already are, and like most followers of a religion, you're already picking and choosing which parts of scripture or religious tradition you accept and reject. You're practically homebrewing your own religion, adding and subtracting whatever law you prefer, and makes it most palatable to your sensibilities. But there's no reason to treat that version of the religion as more correct or more representative of the belief when it's as marginal as it is in the grand scheme of things. And there is a reason we talk about the grand scheme of things when talking about the impact of religion, because they continue to shape the grand scheme of things. They continue to impact the world that you and I live in. They continue to indoctrinate a submission to authority, tradition, patriarchy, and superstition. So when I'm going after religion, it is not about your personal beliefs. It is about what is demonstrably causing harm in the world. Going after religion is not going to be my priority anytime soon, but I'm going to call it out when I see it. I don't think it's a goal of religious anarchists and religious anarchisms to move religious non-anarchists toward anarchism using the religion, but from what I can tell, progressive religions generally don't seem to maintain very well, because religious longevity is tied to passing from adults to children, and adherence in general is just very social in nature. A lot of the religious anarchists that I've met are not part of religious anarchist social circles. They're isolated ideologically. They're part of a church group or whatever that is not of their particular belief system. But yeah, it doesn't seem like progressive religions seem to spread very well. That doesn't have to be the goal of progressive religion. Plenty of religions are not evangelical at all, but I don't expect them to catch on because of the lack of costly signaling or credibility enhancing displays. Things that cost adherents time, money, social status, convenience, comfort, which can reinforce their commitments and affirm their faith. It's also why I don't expect atheopaganism to ever catch on, as much as I respect what it tries to do under that broad and, again, flawed religious umbrella. But I do think, by their very nature and how they hijack human psychology, fundamentalist religions have the winning formula, and our best bet is deconstructing and not accommodating deference to religious ideologies. That, of course, does not mean that I'm going to be some asshole who harasses people for their beliefs. I'm just expressing my own, and I know that I'll still get grief for it. I think that a lot of religious people interpret criticism of their ideas or even ambivalence toward the ideas as a kind of persecution, but I'm not carrying out a pogrom, and I'm against this idea that religious or cultural ideas are untouchable because they are from a religion or from a culture. I think we do anarchism a disservice if we ignore the importance of religious critique and just fixate on the personal benefits of one's meditation practice, or the couple nice things Jesus said, or some really heavy negotiation with the text to put forward what is ultimately one's own beliefs given some kind of sacred permission. Ask yourself, do you really need that sacred permission to be a decent person and advocate for liberation? Do you need scriptures to tell you to be kind and care about others? And if it's just a coincidence of values, then calling out the presence of divergent values within your religious tradition shouldn't be an issue.